Racist cop kicks black janitor in front of judge, not knowing she's judge's wife. The courtroom was buzzing that morning, filled with lawyers, reporters, and spectators waiting for a big trial to start. But before the judge even banged the gavel, something happened that left the entire room stunned. A police officer, in full uniform, walked straight up to the black janitor cleaning near the front and kicked over her mop bucket, splashing dirty water across the floor and onto her shoes. He sneered, treating her like she didn't even deserve to be there. People gasped, others looked away, uncomfortable. What the officer didn't know, what he couldn't possibly imagine, was that the woman he had just humiliated was married to the very judge sitting on the bench. Her name was Angela Brown. Most people only. Before we continue this story, go ahead and subscribe to our channel and like this video so we can bring you even more amazing stories like this one. Knew her as the quiet janitor who cleaned the courthouse every morning before the halls filled with lawyers and clients. She wore the same crisp uniform every day, kept her hair neatly tied back, and carried herself with a calm dignity that never wavered. Angela wasn't rich, and she didn't seek attention. She believed in working hard, in doing every task with pride, no matter how small. To the clerks and attorneys rushing past her, she was invisible. They barely noticed the freshly polished floors or the sparkling windows, but she noticed them. Every smile, every frown, every hurried conversation. At home, Angela lived a life most people wouldn't have guessed. She was married to Judge Malcolm Brown, one of the most respected figures in the state. He adored her, admired her strength, and often told her she didn't need to keep working. But Angela refused to quit. She wanted to stay grounded, to live her life on her own terms. Still, in a world where skin color and uniforms often determined respect, Angela was treated like she was beneath others. Most days, she let the insults roll off her back. But on this particular morning, her silence and grace would collide head-on with the arrogance of a man who believed his badge made him untouchable. Officer Daniel Hughes had a reputation. Around the courthouse, people whispered about his sharp tongue and his cruel jokes. Some said he was just old school. Others knew better. He carried an arrogance that went beyond confidence. It was contempt. He looked at certain people and saw only stereotypes, not human beings. Angela had crossed paths with him before. Usually she avoided him. But this morning, Hughes walked in just as she was finishing up near the main courtroom. She quietly slid her mop bucket aside to give him room to pass. She kept her head down, as she often did, because she knew better than to invite trouble. But Hughes stopped. He looked at her, smirked and muttered, "Always in the way." His voice wasn't loud, but it carried across the room, sharp enough for others to hear. Angela didn't respond. She had learned that silence often spoke louder than any words. She gave a polite nod and stepped further aside. But Hughes wasn't satisfied. He kicked the mop handle out of her hand, sending it clattering across the marble floor. The sound turned heads. People shifted in their seats, uncomfortable, watching, but saying nothing. Angela bent down to pick it up, still calm, still quiet. But Hughes wanted more. With a cruel grin, he lifted his boot and kicked her bucket. Water splashed across the floor, soaking Angela's shoes and staining the clean tiles she had just polished. Gasps filled the room. Some couldn't believe what they'd just seen. Others stared at the floor, unwilling to meet Angela's eyes. Angela straightened up slowly, her face composed. She didn't lash out, didn't shout, didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. Her silence in that moment was louder than any outburst. But up on the bench, Judge Malcolm Brown had seen everything. His jaw tightened, his hand gripped the gavel, and for the first time in years, he felt rage threaten to overtake his steady calm. The gavel slammed down, the sound echoing like thunder in the stunned courtroom. "Officer Hughes!" Judge Brown's voice boomed. "Step forward." The officer froze for a second, then walked stiffly toward the bench. His arrogance wavered, but he forced a smirk back onto his face. "Yes, Your Honor?" Judge Brown's eyes bore into him. "Do you know the woman you just assaulted?" Hughes glanced at Angela, then back at the judge. He shrugged. "Just the janitor, sir. She ought to know her place." The room erupted with gasps. Even those who had looked away before couldn't ignore it now. Judge Brown stood, his robe flowing as he rose to his full height. His voice, calm but heavy with controlled fury, cut through the air. "That janitor is my wife." The silence that followed was crushing. Faces turned pale, eyes widened. Hughes's smirk disappeared. For the first time, he looked small. Judge Brown's words were deliberate, every syllable striking with the weight of justice itself. You have disrespected not only a woman who deserves your respect, but you have disgraced this court, your badge, and the very oath you swore to uphold. Prejudice has no place in these halls, or in the hearts of those sworn to protect. The gavel came down again, final and unyielding. Order was restored, but the officer's career would never be the same. Word of the incident spread like wildfire. By the end of the week, Officer Hughes was suspended pending investigation. As more stories surfaced, it became clear this wasn't an isolated act. His arrogance and cruelty had been a pattern, hidden behind the shield of his badge. This time, though, there were too many witnesses, and no amount of excuses could undo what the entire courtroom had seen. Angela never bragged, never sought revenge. She continued her work with the same grace as before, her head high, her dignity intact. But something had changed. The clerks who once rushed past her now greeted her. Lawyers who had ignored her began to acknowledge her presence, not because she was the judge's wife, but because her quiet strength had demanded respect in a way no title could. Judge Brown carried the weight of that day with him. In future trials, he often reminded those before him that justice wasn't just about laws written on paper. It was about humanity, about how we treated one another when no one was watching. The lesson lingered in the courthouse long after Hughes was gone. People remembered the sight of dirty water splashed across a woman's shoes and the strength of a judge who refused to stay silent. They remembered that respect is not optional. It is the foundation of justice itself. And for those who heard the story, one question echoed long after the gavel fell. How many people are mistreated every day because of prejudice? And what would change if we all looked deeper before we judged?